growing up, my childhood was me constantly moving. I think I've lived in something like 4 countries so far, which, I mean, I know is not a lot, but at the same time, it does have an effect on you when everything around you is temporary. You need a constant, and my constant was my mum, my dad, and the cartoons I watched. Media is a key aspect of the postmodern world. It dominates our lives from childhood to adulthood, from the moment we wake up to the moment we shut our eyes. Therefore, media is a key contributor to an individual's development. So then this poses the question, does representation in media affect an individual's development of their self-identity? In this project, we'll be looking at my experience specifically of the development of my self-identity in a constantly changing postmodern environment, and also we'll be comparing it to the experience of the prior generation to see how it's changed, hopefully giving us an answer to the question, does representation in media affect an individual's development of their self-identity?
Honey, it happened on one of them zippity-doo-dah days. Now that's the kind of day when you can't open your mouth without a song jump right out of it. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful
Who am I?
day.
Who am I becoming? Do I like what I see? Our identity story, the story we tell ourselves and others, can be experienced as a solid or a fluid. As we go through the different stages of our lives, multiple factors can influence how our identity story develops. Your identity is not your CV. It's a complex mixture of personal, the professional, the social and cultural, and relational. The global cosmopolitan voyage can make that identity story even more complex.
Oh my, what a wonderful day.
Oh, plenty of sunshine in the way. Zippity-da-da, zippity-da.
Because I grew up travelling between 4 countries, being an only child and being a product of a different generation from my parents, media was my main teacher when it came to discovering who I was. The characters I saw on TV shows were my only relatable constant, whilst the world around me changed. It's incredibly important for media to give an accurate, non-biased representation of real-life societies, because it doesn't only teach us who we are, it teaches other people who we are.
Another story. What this demonstrates, I think, is how impressionable and vulnerable we are in the face of a story, particularly as children. Because all I had read were books in which characters were foreign, I had become convinced that books, by their very nature, had to have foreigners in them, and had to be about things with which I could not personally identify.
That's okay. Deal them in, Ferb. Who came up with cards anyway?
They were invented by ancient Babylonian traders and merchants.
Actually, the Babylonians had been defunct as a distinct culture for a millennium prior to the introduction of playing cards in India.
That is right! 3 months of summer vacation and I am losing my edge!
Has it only been 3 months? Because I've been adding up all the things we built this summer, and we're way over 150.
Oh, my brain is atrophied. It needs exercise.
Even though I barely identified with the culture of the country I was born in, I felt tied to it by the people. On the inside, I was completely different from what I was on the outside. People related me to the characters I looked similar to, whereas I related myself to the characters who could be anything, regardless of where they came from. I never really looked at myself from the outside, and I never related to the characters that I looked like. And so I was always confused when people would ask me questions that I never knew the answer to. This is one of the dangers we face in a postmodern society. Baudrillard says that society has become so reliant and so brainwashed by media that we've lost contact with the real world. The distinction between reality and media's representation of reality is blurred, or even entirely invisible. Therefore, it's no wonder that Lyotard said that the instability of identity is linked with postmodernity. My experience showed that my self-identity was commonly misjudged by other people due to media's representation of people who looked like me. This affects development because you never really feel like you fit in. Therefore, it is extremely important that we don't have a single story of a society. It's important that we have multiple stories of characters that indulge in their culture but also don't feel tied to it. This, I think, is the next step that we have to take to stop misjudging people based on how they look like. However, how long has this problem been occurring for? And has it changed? Hello.
Hello.
You look really good, by the way.
Thank you.
This is my mum, and she's been on a similar journey as me. Born and growing up in Malaysia, she then took a big jump to move to Dundee, Scotland, and then went back to Malaysia to have me, and then went back to Dundee to finish off her studies. Therefore, she's really good to talk to when it comes to what it was like for the prior generation seeing representation in media and how it affected their development. The films that came out when my mum was in her childhood would rarely see brown-skinned characters. Therefore, most of her colleagues around her would have only seen a single story of people who looked like my mum. This would have affected their perception of my mum because people who look like us would have all had the same story in their minds.
The other thing is, as I mentioned, because of my color, this is not universally changing, but it is a common perception. I'm a Malaysian Indian, by the way, so my skin color looks like Indian. So the one common question that I always get asked is, which part of India are you from?
Yeah, same here. Before, there was not a lot of representation of brown-skinned people in media compared to more recently. An example of how this has changed is the character Ravi Ross from the TV show Jessie.
The role was initially meant for a Hispanic kid, but Karan impressed the panel at the audition, and they created a character just for him.
Until more recently, society felt like a whole culture could be summarized into one character.
Which is quite, sometimes can be annoying because we are the fourth generation of Indian in Malaysia and we don't have any direct connection to Indian anymore.
When I was a kid, there was a lot more brown-skinned characters on TV, but they still all had the same story. They were all insanely clever, education-orientated, skinny, ate curry.
Now, how many had to deal with, being called a poo or that being referenced?
Types are so outdated. There's more Indian dudes doing sitcoms than there are running 7-Eleven.
Therefore, I see the next step as each brown character will start to be more different from each other. They'll start to branch off and develop their own personalities. We've seen it happen before with different ethnic groups. This is what I see as the next step for us. as characters and casts become more diverse. Therefore, hopefully this will affect someone's self-development of their personal identity more positively. Instead of us feeling left out, we can feel more empowered by our culture, but not defined by it. Overall, representation does affect a person's development of their self-identity, and it's extremely important that we don't have a biased representation of different ethnic cultures, because if it's disparaging, it can affect a person's self-development in a negative way. So I hope you enjoyed this project, because it was so much fun to make. I spent a lot of time on it, and I'm hoping it's a little bit different from what you've seen before. It's been an absolute pleasure studying this module, and I look forward to creating more projects like this for you soon.